Welcome back. You're listening to the Dr. Casey Show, and I'm your host, sports psychologist, Dr. Casey Cooper. Today's topic, playing beyond prejudice, after an unfortunate incident in our Southern California high schools. And to complete the topic today, we're not going to finish the topic because playing beyond prejudice is obviously the start of a larger conversation, and I believe we're going to have some follow-ups to this. And Ken has been waiting so patiently on the phone. Ken from San Bernardino, welcome to the Dr. Casey Show. What's your comment or question?
Yes, the way I understand this incident is that every time that a black player would get the ball, they would the crowd or this thing called the pit would make these noises. Is that correct?
Yes, monkey noises.
Right. Where were the coaches? What were the coaches doing? What were the officials of the game doing?
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't at the game, and I've only seen snippets and clips. And it has been acknowledged by the high school whose students were engaging this behavior that it was completely inappropriate. In fact, the pit crew has been disbanded.
Okay. Well, listen, these coaches and officials are really on notice about these type of incidents. You had one caller that called in, said it happened at Long Beach.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the coaches, you have the officials who are already on notice about this type of thing possibly occurring when two schools like this get together.
Right.
So part of the responsibility lies on them. They allowed this to occur.
Absolutely.
Now, I happen to be a UCLA graduate, and I know that we get a lot of our basketball players from Mater Dei. I'm not familiar with this other school. You said it's Servite?
Servite High School.
Is that Cervite?
Yes, it's a rival. And you are hinting at the crux of the issue, which is that this is a larger problem throughout sports. And you're right that everyone should have been on notice and should have been empowered with a plan to respond in the moment. And I completely agree with that. And earlier in the show, I was talking about understanding bystander behavior and how it is that so many people can be witnessing something that's awful and feel frozen about it.
Well, what I would have done is gone immediately to the officials.
Right.
You know, you have I don't know how many they have at the high school basketball games, but you go to the officials and you ask them to have that type of behavior stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And another way to stop this from occurring is you have a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have watched college football games where the crowd representing the home team would behave inappropriately, and I have seen coaches go up there and control that crowd and tell them to stop doing that because there is a penalty for it.
Right.
So if they start imposing penalties for that type of behavior, you'll stop most of it.
That is a very good point, Ken, and I know that CIF is listening. If not today, they'll be listening to the rebroadcast, and I think we need to work together as a community to really address this because we owe it to the young people developing in our high schools to appropriately guide them through these difficult learning lessons.
Well, you need to talk to some of those parents, too.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for the call, Ken. I really appreciate it. And in fact, this conversation leads right into my next point. I want to raise an issue that's relevant to our California Code of Education. So I actually, I got on the phone and I started calling around because I was kind of curious. If we take the sports out of this and the uniforms out of this, and again, I asked people earlier in the episode to visualize a student walking through the quad on campus, not in a uniform of sports, but just walking through at lunchtime and imagining the same behavior happening around them. There would be, you'd be mortified if an administrator or someone didn't step in to protect the student. So I got in touch with Dr. Arthur Cummins, actually, who's a member of the California Department of Education, and I also looked on the website. But Dr. Cummins is actually the Orange County Region's Safety and Health School Coordinator. We actually have such a thing. And he helped to educate me that there is very specific educational codes in California addressing bullying and hate crime behaviors at our schools, and that this is very serious and the schools are required to respond. So let me provide you a quick definition of bullying. Bullying can no longer be dismissed as harmless or teasing. Bullying is a pattern of deliberate, negative, hurtful, aggressive acts that works to shift the balance of physical, emotional, or social power. That qualifies in this situation. I don't care if it's sports or not. The second thing is that there is a definition of what is a hate crime. And that is behavior that is motivated by bias or hate, is similar to bullying, and is intended to cause emotional suffering, not just physical injury or property damage, through intimidation, harassment, bigoted slurs or epithets, force or threat of force, or vandalism. So let's think about this, parents. This is significant. I'm thinking about this. This is happening at a school event. All right. Now, in this situation that we've identified earlier, these are private schools. So actually, California code doesn't apply. This only applies to our public K through 12 schools. So that, and generally speaking, private schools tend to, without force, adopt the same things. But I'm thinking that being at a school sporting event doesn't change or negate a need for a response, just as our last caller mentioned up. And I bring this up because bullying behavior is on the rise in our schools, including bullying via text messaging. That is a huge problem. I've heard about that in my private practice. And if you're listening, if you're a parent or a coach or an administrator, know now, as I'm sure you do, that your schools are required to have a safety plan in place, and they are required to review it annually. So please consider addressing very specifically sports-based clauses in your safety plan. And by doing that, you're going to do a few things. You're going to increase awareness on the part of the student body. All right. And the second thing you're going to do is you're going to make it easier for administrators to respond faster. Ironically, and I see that you're on the phone, Miles, I'm going to do my very best to get back to you, but I need this important piece of information out there. Ironically, if you live in the region of Region 9 for the California Department of Education, there's an upcoming training that Dr. Cummins is hosting in February 11th. For more information about this training, I feel so passionately about this, I posted the PDF on my website. Go to drcaseycooper.com. All right. And it'll be under latest news. You got to click under latest news and you'll see the PDF there. So we've got just a few minutes left, and we're going to pick up on this topic tomorrow, in addition to the fact that I've got some updates regarding concussions. I've got an update on the Devlin family. We've got headlines, all sorts of stuff. But let's take Miles' question really quick. Miles from Riverside, what's going on?
Hey, how you doing? As I sat back and listened to you, that is a huge rivalry. And from the way you're talking, I'm not dismissing on your knowledge base, but I don't think you've been to many high school basketball games. There could have been 3,000 people in that game, and believe me, the officials and the coaches on that sideline couldn't hear anything. They're screaming at their players from their own bench and their own huddle.
Right.
I know, I coach, I've been in those schools. It's just ungodly.
Yeah, and Miles, actually, I'm going to cut you off for a second, actually, because in the interest of time, you bring up a very important point that I did address at the beginning of the hour, and I'm sorry you didn't get to hear that. And I've been to quite a few rivalries in my day. But the first step in a bystander deciding whether or not they're able to intervene is noticing. And I mentioned that we can't assume that people do notice or that people are made aware. And it falls on the entire community, if they notice something that is going on that they identify as a problem, to bring it to other people's attention. So I absolutely agree with you on that. Thank you very much for the call, Miles. But unfortunately, we're coming to our very last minute of the show and got to wrap things up. If you missed earlier in the episode and you want to get caught up on some of the things that I had to say about analyzing the situation, about how, as a sports community, we need to move forward in positively addressing this issue in a very constructive way, feel free to tune in for a rebroadcast on my website. It's the drcaseyshow.com. And if you listen for the first time today, I'm on every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 3. I'm here only at AM 830, home of the Angels.